All right, we are back with another edition of the Osceola Seminole Sideline FSU Spring Football 2023 preview show. Today, we're going to talk about the wide receiver group. It's the first time in a long time, Jerry and Mark, that we know going into the spring and ultimately the fall that Florida State has a wide receiver group that is a position of strength. There were still questions going into last year, but obviously this is a group that's a lot of is expected of this year, particularly going into Jordan Travis's senior year and with some of the pieces that they have added. Hakeem Williams, the top-rated prospect, is on campus. They lost Malik McClain, the transfer portal, and Ontario Pookie Wilson to graduation. But again, like we have done with every position group, and we'll get into specifics and where we think people are going to line up as we get into this. But as a group, as a whole, how excited are you about the wide receiver group and FSU's 3 and 4 wide receiver sets, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, definitely a strength of the team. You know, you talk about weapons on offense at, all positions and the versatility of this group, the different skill sets you get with this group, the playmaking ability you have with this group, it really excites you. But, as an offensive line coach and a running game aficionado, the thing that excites me the most about this group is how they work in the running game. The reason we've had so many big runs and big plays in the running game is because these guys work their tail off on the outside and spring those big runs. You can't have that without that. And that's the attitude of this group. It's unselfish. It's about, doing your job. And the way this offense is designed to highlight these guys' skills, because if you present a problem on defense, we have an answer, and it's because of this group.
Jerry, how about you? How excited are you about this group? You got Johnny Wilson back, Micah Pittman's back. We are anticipating that Winston Wright will be back in some form or fashion. Deuce Spann, Darian Williamson, who came back and made, he was lost kind of in the middle of the season, came back and had a strong finish to the season. Just how excited are you about this group as a whole?
I'm more excited than I've been since we had Randy Moss, Peter Warwick, Lavernius Coles, and Ron Dugans.
Well, now you are building expectation.
Yeah.
With a state.
Whoa, pump the brakes there, brother.
I didn't say as excited.
Listen, in case you don't know what we're talking about, Jerry gave us a hold your horses on the defensive tackles group in a previous preview. So that's kind of what we're laughing about here. And of course, we are missing our wide receiver guru, Bob Ferrante, who could not be with us today. He is covering basketball, and he is unfortunately not going to be able to be with us. And Bob at practices really does do a great job of keeping up with what's going on with receivers. So we do miss him. But listen,
let me jump in a second and just say something. I want to boast a little bit about this Seminole Sidelines last spring. Mark, to Mark's point, we predicted that there would be extended runs because these receivers last spring showed you they would get after people. Micah Pittman, sometimes you get a transfer comes in and you expect their impact to be one thing. I thought he was going to be a handsy, good slot receiver. But in the spring, immediately what caught our eye was he's a pesky blocker. He would get after the defensive backs and make practice rough on them, because he has an attitude about blocking people, and you saw that with Johnny Wilson and others,
yep.
To where all of a sudden a 5-yard run, there's green grass because somebody's downfield blocking.
Yeah, they take great pride in it. The Fab Four was a group like that, right? The Lawrence Dawsey, Terry Anthony, Bruce Lesane, Ronald Lewis. Those guys back in the day when you could headhunt and hit guys, blindside them, they would hunt those shots, right? And they take great pride in it. And guys would have to have their head on a swivel. This group is kind of similar in that they take great pride in being that hard-nosed bulldog blocker that just, pesky is what you said. I said just determined, is what they are. And again, that's the culture set by this group, and you got to give Dugans a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, Ron was a fairly physical guy as a receiver when he was a player.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has come, during this tenure at Florida State, he's, been maligned at times, caught some criticism because of the lack of development at receiver. And what we know now, sometimes it had to do with who they were signing, and not exactly. And then they started signing better players. And Ron has become a better coach, as all coaches are.
Amazing how that works.
Yes, as you know, my father would tell you he was a great coach when he had Paul McGowan, Marvin Jones, and Derek Brooks. But when he didn't have those guys, he wasn't quite as good a coach. But listen, do you think that is some of this the way they block Jerry? And Jerry, you've been around Ron Dugans a long time. You saw him as a player. You've seen his development as a coach. Do you think some of that physicality that this receiver group shows is a reflection of Ron's personality?
Yeah, you get good at what you make a priority, right? And so
that's Coach Bowden. Yep, you get what you demand.
And I think Ron, it's a priority to Ron. And I think it's a priority to Mike as well, who is a former receiver and who wants to have 2 1,000-yard backs, and you don't usually get that 4 yards at a clip. You usually got to have some 20, some gash plays in there. And that all comes down to the running back. Now, I mean the receivers downfield. What I was going to say was last spring, we were talking on the defensive tackle segment about guys getting in fights, at spring, and that you can usually tell how good a spring is by how many fights you have. And do you remember that, Patrick, last spring? Pittman, Mike had to stop practice at one point, and I overheard him say something to the effect of, Mike, I brought you here to be a receiver, not be a fighter. Because he got into 2 good ones in the first week of spring. And it was just, I think it had a lot to do, our defensive backs hadn't been pursued like that, like the way he would stalk them. Yep. And maybe he blocked them a little longer than they've ever been blocked before. And,
I love that we're 8 minutes into a wide receiver segment. All we're talking about is blocking. This is awesome.
That's right. Well, it's true. I mean, what Jerry's saying is true. I mean, I remember the first time I watched Johnny Wilson in practice. I did not get to go to spring practice last year. So the first time I saw these new guys was in the fall because I was in Atlanta working for that indoor spring pro football league. So, when I first saw, Jerry and Bob had stayed in contact with me when I was in Atlanta, and I'd get fairly regular updates on what was going on. I'd text, and they both mentioned that how physical these new guys were, and when Johnny Wilson gets those long arms and he gets inside hands and get those long, he's hard to get off of, and he does have a very physical mentality, as does Micah Pittman. And if you ever saw Micah Pittman's father, Michael Pittman, play running back, where that mentality comes from, because his father was a badass now. And,
well, the thing that
still is probably
the thing that's deceptive about Micah is he carries most all of his weight in his base.
Yeah, he's a thick kid.
I mean, he's a powerful dude.
He looks like a running back.
He really does. So, anyway, it's fun to talk about the want to that our receivers have.
Yeah.
Well, and that translates into their ability to make plays, because that want to, that desire is you just can't turn it on, turn it off. It's got to be in all facets of your game. And so the ball, to do those kinds of things, the ability that just translates into all facets of your game.
Yeah. And I guess, if you're a defensive back at a Florida State practice, that's helping you prepare for what you're going to face come Saturday.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think the defensive back should, I think it's getting more towards those old school days, Jerry and Mark, where some of the toughest competition you're going to face is on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. We always reference that when we talk about the days when you were playing, Mark. Most of the time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, you guys went up against better competition in 11 on 11 than you ever were going to go against on Saturdays, minus Miami, Florida, Notre Dame, those type of people. I think we are getting back to that. And, what iron sharpens iron, right? And I think Florida State's gotten deep enough at some of these positions where we're going to see some of these guys get better because of the people they're facing in practice. And I think we're going to see that throughout the roster, throughout the, offensive line versus defensive line. And I think we'll see it at the receivers versus DBs as well.
I've made the point over and over again over the years that competition makes practice fun and not drudgery.
Yes. Yeah. Hey, listen, hopefully we're getting back to those days at some of these positions where guys don't want to miss practice, because if they do, there's no, how many times, Mark, when you were playing or coaching at Florida State, if you missed practice, were you worried about getting your spot back?
That's exactly right. And that's the essence of competition. I think that's what excites us about this team in general. Overall, is that the depth and the competition that at every position, except maybe quarterback, is there. You have those kind of things going on. So you got to perform every day in practice, or else you're going to be not down a notch, and somebody else is sitting there waiting for an opportunity. So let's good times.
Let's move on to Pat. The thing that we talk about physicality and blocking, and a lot of these plays that we run, these receiver screens or tunnel screens, or that guy that when they stack them out there, that's a physical assignment to go, make that play happen.
Yeah.
And that receiver's got to get after the defensive back in order to make the other receiver have an open lane. And I just see a much more physical receiving core than we've had in years past.
Yeah, I agree. And listen, we talked about the fact that Malik McClain transferred out and Ontario Wilson graduated, but you brought in Hakeem Williams, the top-rated prospect in this class for FSU, and then really Winston Wright is a newcomer as far as potentially being on the field in the fall. We think that he will be. Is this group as good or better than it was last year with the additions and subtractions? Is it just kind of a wash?
Well, I think it's better, and I think it's better because I think Johnny Wilson is better than when he got here.
Yeah.
Mark, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's a wash in terms of you lose Pokey, but you get Winston Wright. You lose Malik, but you get possibly Hakeem Williams. But the fact that Micah Pittman's a year older, Johnny Wilson's a year older, Williamson's a year older, Portier's a year older. Deucepan's going to continue to develop, and Ja'Kai Douglas. So I think those guys all being a year older in the system gives you so many more options, and that they're going to be better. So I think overall as a group, they'll probably be better.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to bring Van Travius Jacobs is also in school, and he was a signee now. We'll get into him a little bit as we get into position by position breakdown. But let's take a look at what we are projecting here at the Osceola. And listen, we know that these guys will line up at multiple spots. We've seen it all the time. They'll learn to play multiple positions, X, Z, or slot. And we'll see, obviously, we'll see some 4 and 5 wide receiver sets. We've seen empty. We've seen certainly full receiver sets on a regular basis. So, but what we're looking at X is, which is the receiver to the tight end side of the field, outside receiver. We've got Johnny Wilson coming back as a starter, followed by Darian Williamson, who was impressive at times during the season, and then Kentron Portier, would be the third teamer going in. Listen, Johnny Wilson was dominant at times last year, had an unbelievable Cheez-It Bowl. Mark, we did see some times where he made the exceptional catch. At other times, he would drop a pass. Probably one of the reasons he came back, other than it was a deep receiver. There's a lot of good receivers in college football, and I don't know what his draft grade was or even requested one. But listen, how much better can a guy like Johnny Wilson get? Are your hands, or is there a way you can become a more consistent pass catcher?
Yeah, I think his ceiling is obviously very high. I mean, it was so frustrating. He makes the hard look easy and the easy look hard, right?
Yep.
And that was him in a nutshell. But the number of big plays he produced in important moments, I think, is the thing that really excites us as FSU fans. He made big plays when they mattered in Louisville, in Oklahoma, in Florida. Just you name it. He produced big plays in big moments, and that's the mark of that's the definition of a star receiver. And so he has that potential. Now, obviously, where he can improve is like I said, make the easy look easy, right? Instead of make the easy look hard, and those are the things I know that I'm sure he's working on. I'm sure he's self-aware enough to know that's where he needs to improve. And that's the consistency to perform at that level on every play is something I know Mike and Dugans are working with him on. So that's the thing I'm looking forward to see the progress he makes there.
Yeah, he had 43 catches for 897 yards last year. I can't remember the last time Florida State had receiver had anywhere near 800 yards receiving. It seems like Willie's last year, I'm not sure the entire group had 800 yards receiving, so they have certainly come a long way. And then Darian Williamson, we're anticipating he will line up behind Johnny. He played in 5 games last year, 8 catches for 131 yards. I can't remember what game. He caught a pass on the sideline, never came back in the game, was out for weeks. I don't know what the injury was. BC,
Boston
okay.
College, yeah.
What are your impressions of Darian, and how big a role do you think he will have? We've seen him use him. I think he was used on some reverses, that type of thing as well. But how excited are you about him and a healthy Darian Williamson and a year older, and what he can bring to this offense?
So I put him and Kentron Poitier in the same category. They're both big guys that I think have pretty good ceilings. I think we haven't seen the best of them yet. The sheer of experience this spring is going to be important. But yeah, I mean, they're big bodies, tall, long, and physical. Yep. And so this is going to be a big spring for those two guys.
Yeah, and listen, I think we've seen, I know for a fact, I believe Kentron was a leading receiver in a game. Johnny was a leading receiver in multiple games. They do seem to be an unselfish group as a whole. It seemed like every other week there was another receiver who was the leading receiver. We saw Micah lead the team in receiving in a couple of games. It really was amazing how they spread the ball around. But I agree with you. Those guys are good, solid backups. In fact, Kentron was 14 catches for 283 yards last year, and you would assume that his numbers will probably go up this year. And then, of course, I think the guy we're all excited about. And listen, we saw him practice more and more as we go over to the Z receiver, which is the outside receiver away from the tight end, traditionally. You got Winston Wright, Deuce Spann, and Hakeem Williams. Winston Wright was one of the best receivers in the Big 12 his last year at West Virginia. Had over 1,000 yards receiving. I think he had about 80 catches that year. And of course, came to Florida State, was involved in an accident, did not go through camp last fall, started going through more and more aggressive running as the season went on. I think we're all hoping he comes back. We do anticipate. We've heard nothing as of yet that he would not be ready for the fall. We're not quite sure about the spring, but when you're talking about a guy that was that dynamic in a pass-happy conference, how excited are you guys about? And I don't know if you watched any of his film at West Virginia. It's pretty impressive. Kid. How excited are you guys about what he might be able to do this offense in the pass game?
Well, Mike always talks about wanting dynamic playmakers, and that's what he is, right?
Yep.
So if he's good to go this spring, I mean, I'm the most excited guys will be the quarterback and the head coach and quarterback coach, because he can add a dimension to our offense.
Yeah, I think where Johnny Wilson gets open and just out physicals you with his length and his physicalness, I think Winston Wright, if he's like he was at West Virginia, is going to be a guy that loses you and runs routes and creates space to get open, and that's exciting. So you got two different things, two different skill sets there that are going to be very dynamic and create different problems for defenses. And I think, this whole group, I kind of divided them up into three different groups. I said, Johnny Wilson, Micah Pittman, Winston Wright, assuming he's where he was. I think those are your core base guys that you could really depend on. I think Darian Williamson, Poitier, Deuce Spann are guys that need to develop, can be really high ceiling guys that need to develop. And then you get your wild cards and Ja'Kai Douglas and Hakeem Williams that, can obviously make plays and unknown with Williams coming in from high school. But so I kind of have them divided up that way. And so I'm counting on Winston Wright being a guy that has a unique skill set from anybody else that we have, in that he's gonna be a great route runner with speed and pace and separation and making dynamic catches and just making big plays.
Well, when we did our preseason articles last year, we talked about somebody each position group. We actually had to pick a surprise player, somebody that we didn't know much about. And of course, I did not know the extent of Winston Wright's injury. I don't think any of us did, to be honest with you. Obviously, for valid reasons, they're very, conservative of what they tell us about a player's injury. And I had picked him as my wild card factor. If he was able to do what he did at West Virginia at Florida State, it could certainly change the offense. And if he is able to come back, and I fully anticipate that he'll be back by fall. I don't know about the spring. I think we saw him practice more, but I think he's got a chance to be a game changer for this offense, particularly when you look at the pieces they've added at tight end, and we'll get into tight ends preview a couple days from now. But anyway, I think it's going to be fascinating to see what he does. We know Deuce Spann's a great athlete, and then of course, I think we're all very excited. I think, Mark, at any position on the football field where it's easiest to play as a true freshman or young is receiver. Hakeem Williams is just a different looking dude. You could, what would your expectations be of a true freshman? Listen, he should be in high school, right? He's going through spring a year early. There's going to be a lot of build up around Hakeem. What should our expectations be, fans' expectations be going into spring with a guy that it's as highly touted as Hakeem Williams is?
Yeah, so I was on staff when Tamarick Vanover came to FSU. And when it became evident that guy was just different, that he was just, speed, hands, ability to make plays. And it got to the point, okay, how can we get him the ball? What's the easiest way to get him the ball? Well, run him on to take off, right? See if they can catch him. Throw him a screen, give him a reverse, get him the ball in space, let him do his thing. Don't overcomplicate him with reading defenses and cutting off routes and doing a bunch of sight reads. Just tell him to do one or two things, and let's get him the ball and see what he can do and let him grow into the position. And I think, thank goodness he's coming in the spring, and because look, this offense it's complicated from the outside looking in. I'm sure they have it in a way that is simple for the players, right? Multiple personnel groups, multiple formations, motions, different alignments, X's inside of Z's, Z's inside of X's, Y's on the outside. I mean, all kinds of different things, trips, 2x2s, whatever. And so there's a lot for him to learn. Teach him one thing, give him a couple of base things. Let's run him on a takeoff. Let's give him a reverse. Let's throw him a screen. Let's run him on a slant. Let's let him do this easy things and let's showcase his natural talent as he grows into the position. I think that's the easiest way to kind of handle it. And that's kind of what we did with Vanover. And he ended up being, by the end of the year, obviously a really impactful player. And then, of course, for that first championship in '93, I kind of see the same kind of possibly potential kind of thing with Hakeem.
Yeah, Vanover was a different dude. A side story, my first year coaching high school ball was at Tallahassee Lincoln, which just happened to be his senior year at Leon. they beat us like 63-7, and it was like a track meet. Every time he touched the ball, whether it was kickoff or receiver, he went 70. I mean, he must have had 500 yards total offense that game. I mean, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. And I played against Eric Terrell, who was a freak himself.
Yep.
And anyway, so Tamar Vanover was an unbelievable athlete, and he was fun to watch. But
Pat, you're talking, relatively equivalently recruited and high profile guys, both big bodies.
Yes.
Vanover and Hakeem are big people. What I was going to say, Pat, is, what's my expectations? My expectation matters less than what his expectation is. And I got the idea from the time I've been around him that he has very high expectations for himself immediately.
Yep.
I don't know him well enough, but my sense is he is a self-assured person.
But at the same token, he does, based on what the press conference, he seems very grounded as well, though.
Very well, and I use the word self-assured versus intentionally, because I think his maturity level is high enough that he could be an impact player. So it's going to be interesting to watch his development.
Yeah, I think, listen, I think I'm as excited to see him as I am Winston Wright if he goes through spring, which,
we're going to see if he has an interest in blocking, because that'll probably.
Hey, I'm pretty sure, Mike being a former receiver himself at Central Arkansas, I'm pretty sure he has these conversations with all these wide receiver prospects. So, what they say, the hardest position to play and coach is the one that your head coach played in high school or college. So, there's probably a lot of that's probably why Mark and I talk so much about the offensive line, because it's where we played, and we have a little bit of understanding about that. But all right, let's move to slot receiver. And listen, I think this is another position that's got a chance to have a really good position battle. Micah Pittman obviously will come in as the number one slot receiver, but when Ja'Kai Douglas was healthy, Ja'Kai Douglas made a lot of plays, and they're both similar builds. Ja'Kai's gotten a little bit bigger, and then of course you've got Josh Burrell and then Dre Jacobs. Now I think Dre is a true freshman, early enrollee, probably got some work to do in the weight room. He's kind of a slight guy, but let's talk about Pittman and Douglas. In particular, we know that Micah had about 300 yards receiving. I believe he had 34 catches, something to that extent. I'm gonna look it up right now. But I think that's more. He had 32 catches for 330 yards. Ja'Kai only played in 7 games, 10 for 123. What kind of combo do you guys think they make at slot receiver? And again, we know they're going to, Mike plays a lot of the receivers. Mike and Ron do. Is that a true battle, or those guys you expect those guys to split reps throughout the spring camp and moving into the fall?
Yeah, I think they're pretty much interchangeable. And again, the beauty of this offense is, as an offensive coordinator, you're trying to create matchups, and so through personnel groups. When a defense sees 4 receivers run out there, he's thrown in a dime defense. He's thrown in, 6 DBs out there. But then when one of those receivers is Micah Pittman or Ja'Kai Douglas, and all of a sudden he motions, and now they're in the backfield. Now we've got 2 backs and 3 receivers, and it's a totally different, totally different set of plays, totally different, rules, the whole 9 yards. So you create matchup problems, and now, and the same thing can be applied to the tight ends. All of a sudden, you think you have 2 tight ends. All of a sudden, you got a 4 receiver set. So the matchup problems you have in terms of personnel groups, what you see go in the huddle and what you see being executed on the field formationally or play wise is totally different. And that's where you create those matchups. And Mike is really, really good. Mike and Atkins are really, really good at doing that and mixing that up. These 2 guys give you the ability to do that, right? You can line them up in the slot, you can line them up in the backfield, you can line them up at Z or X and do different things. And so they are matchup problems. They are guys that are going to give defense coordinators headaches because not only are they really good players, but they're really productive. And I'm excited to see Ja'Kai Douglas. I think he is a guy that can really be a huge matchup problem and be a really productive player with big plays.
And he's also a guy that can line up in the backfield and do some things, personnel groupings, and try to create some mismatches against linebackers.
Exactly, exactly my point. Yeah,
I was going to say that Ja'Kai, I think, is one of the more dynamic players in that receiver group. I mean, don't go to sleep on him.
No.
I think he'll challenge Pittman for the number of reps they get, and they may both be in the game at the same time in some sets. So it's no slight on either one of them. Both of them are super capable. Now, the one thing I want to see, and Kez and I were talking about this a little bit, is that slot receiver finding seams and spots to, the weaknesses in the defense. I think we have an opportunity to do that better than we did it last year. I'd like, and they're a year older. Both of them have been in the system a year longer. And I expected Pittman to become that guy that when things fell apart, Travis would find. But we didn't see that much last year. It was really the outside receiver, Wilson,
I'm sorry,
Johnny. Jordan and Johnny seemed to find a groove during the year. And you would expect that to be that slot receiver would be that guy. And so that'll be interesting to see how that develops.
Yeah, and listen, we haven't even started talking about the dadgum tight ends yet, and they added two. And listen, all right, so if you are Jordan Travis, and you're looking, we've already covered the running backs and what, you got Trey Benson back, you got Toa Feely, we're all fired up about Rodney Hill. Jaheim Bell's going to line up at the running back position, some tight end, some slot receiver, some. Mark, I mean, if you're Jordan Travis, what are you thinking? First of all, there's only one football. Everybody's going to be open.
I'm looking at it from the perspective of a defense coordinator. I mean, like I said, you dictate what defensive personnel you have on the field based on what's out on the field offensively. And you have no idea, who's going to line up where, because so many guys are so versatile and the personnel groups are so the possibilities of the way you can line up and create mismatches is endless with the versatility we have at tight end, the versatility we have at running back, the versatility we have at wide receiver to do multiple things from different areas of the formations is incredible. I mean, the only limit is the imagination of Mike Norvell and Alex Atkins. That's the only limitation. And then, still got a quarterback that can score a touchdown from anywhere on the field. Right?
Yeah, we were talking running backs yesterday. Bob and I were talking running backs the other day, and before we got off, we were like, "Oh shit, we haven't even talked about Jordan running the ball yet."
Yeah. So I mean, it's an embarrassment of riches in terms of the possibilities of this offense. And Mike has demonstrated he has the ability to be able to do that and scheme these things. And that's really got you really excited. It's got me excited about this offense. I don't think there's anybody that can hold us back if we're healthy and executing.
We're going to get into tight ends, but Mark, since we don't know whether you'll be with us, I do have a question. All right, so you've got Jaheim Bell coming in. He caught 73 passes. Ran the ball 73 times last year at South Carolina, caught 25 passes. When you have Bell and Murlock in the game at the same time next year, or Bell and Douglas, there's so many things you can do personnel-wise, right? Because it looks like 11 personnel grouping, but all of a sudden you got two backs, or you got two tight ends. You can run 11, you can run 12, you could even go with 22, which we don't see a lot of that in college football anymore. But just talk about when you can when you can line up with a personnel group that has the flexibility traditionally it's 11, but because he can line up at running back, now you can get to 12, 2 backs, you can get to 21. Talk about how that stresses a defense and what, structurally, and when you can play different formations with the same personnel group.
Right. So if you go to a traditional 11 personnel, being, a running back and a tight end and 3 receivers, a defense usually counters by going a nickel, a 4-2 with 5 DBs, right? Now you put in 12 personnel, 1 back and 2 tight ends, and that's really a running formation. That's like almost being in the eye, right? So now you counter that by going maybe 3 linebackers. Oh, but then you take Bell and you put him out in the slot, right? And now we're not in nickel, but I have a linebacker covering Jaheim Bell. Well, that's a great matchup. Conversely, you put Ja'Kai Douglas or Micah Pittman out in the slot, and you've shown 4 receivers. Now you may go dime defense, and you have 6 DBs in the game. All of a sudden, you take Ja'Kai Douglas and put him in the backfield right next to Cedric, next to Trey Benson. Right now, all of a sudden, you're 3 receivers and 2 backs, and now I have 6 DBs in the game, and we're going to run the ball, right? So, so now you say, well, next time they do that, I'm not going to be fooled. I'm going to stay in nickel, and then so you have 2 linebackers in the game, and all of a sudden now here's Ja'Kai Douglas. He's out in the slot, and I got a linebacker covering him, right? Yeah. And so I either got to rotate a safety down and put a guy back in the box and have a safety covering, but now I got single heights. There's so many different ways that you can dictate coverage, because typically defenses only have so much time to prepare for certain things. Yep. And when you rotate through your personnel groups and formations, you may hit on something and say, hey, they really didn't practice that. They're going to play really base defense against this look. Let's major in this the rest of the game, and we got a great package that can take advantage of what the defense is not prepared for and generate yards and points, right? Yep. So that's the beauty of having the versatility that we have at the skill positions, both tight end, receiver, and running back. So yeah, it's like I said, it's an embarrassment of riches. The only limitation is the imagination of Atkins and Mike and how they're going to utilize all this skill.
Yeah, well, we saw the imagination in the Cheez-It Bowl when they did the unbalanced line and had Douglas lined up at tackle and threw him a tackle eligible pass. So he's got the imagination. I mean, listen, I was thinking about the other day, if you got Toafili and Bell in at the same time, you can go 11, you can go empty, you can go 20. I mean, there's all kind of things that you can do. Now, I don't think we've ever seen anybody line up in 20 personnel at Florida State since I've been covering the team. But anyway, I'm just saying that there's infinite there's unlimited possibilities.
There's no limit. There's no limit in what you can do.
And
go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, let me just add that not only is it, you said it's limited to the imagination of the coordinator and the head coach, but let me just add to that, you've got a 5th or 6th year quarterback who could actually, you can put a lot of it in his hands, where you can trust him to make the right decision now. So having all those people is a great thing, but if you don't have a quarterback that you can trust to get the ball to the right guy, you're limited. And so Florida State has the embarrassment of riches on offense and the trigger man.
Yeah. Listen, Jay, I was going to ask you this question. When is the last time you can remember Florida State being this deep at the skill positions?
Again, I've seen us have more talented people at the skill positions, 4 and 5-star guys, but not the depth of talent. These guys are talented that we have. Not uber talented in terms of star rankings and whatnot, but no, I haven't seen it.
Well, Jerry, I'll say this too. When we had those kind of guys at these positions in the past, there wasn't the offensive structure to take advantage of it like we have in today's offenses, right? Could you imagine having, the guys that we had in the past running an offense like this? We ran the eye, and we did get in the four wideouts thing, but it was, the way offenses has evolved, really can take advantage of what we have. And so, although maybe not the level of talent depth, that we may have had during our championship years, the ability to take advantage of the talent we do have is much better.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Now, a couple of questions. Actually, it's a bad question for now. So this is more fall related. I'll save that for our fall preview. I was going to ask you guys if you thought Jordan Travis, with all this talent around him, would run the ball 82 times like he did this past season. I don't think he will. And I was going to ask you if you guys thought there would be a 1,000-yard receiver. Listen, as much as they're going to have to spread the ball around, or can spread the ball around with who they have, I think you may have several 500-yard receivers, maybe not a 1,000-yard receiver. But listen, it's crazy to think about. The more we talk about it, the more excited I get about what this offense can do. And we thought this offense was good last year, and it was good last year. So let me ask you this, and we'll obviously the offensive line is going to play a factor in this, and we'll talk about that at a later date. But just do you think that this offense can be noticeably more explosive with its skill players this year than it was in 2022?
Yes, because of the confidence born from last year. I think the experience of last year, the light came on, especially for Jordan Travis, right? And some of these receivers that are coming back, the light came on. And so building on that success, I think will translate into some really exciting times offensively. I really do.
Well, we're about 11 days out from spring practice. I wish March 6th was here already. All right, well, guys, somehow we managed to top 38 minutes that we did on the defensive tackles with a 42-minute preview of receivers. But obviously I want to thank Mark and Jerry for taking the time out of their day to join me to talk about the Florida State receivers. If you are not an Osceola subscriber, but you do watch or listen to our video/podcast, we'd ask that you go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com. Check us out. We've got written previews on these position battles and position groups going into spring practice. We will still have our tight end preview, offensive line preview, and defensive back preview coming out, both video and written previews. We also got plenty of coverage on men's and women's basketball, baseball, softball. It's all going on right now. And we've even got some news on the NIL and the Battle End Collective that will be coming out later today. But a ton of stuff going on, but we got some free content. Obviously, we'd love you to give us a try with either a monthly or annual subscription, but please go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com and give us a chance. Jerry, you got anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, that's good. We're
All
great.
right.
Thank you for listening and for subscribing.
Yeah, we do appreciate you guys listening, and we hope you enjoy the content we're providing both on the site and through our YouTube channel and through our StreamYard videos. But we'll be back again in a couple of days with some more video previews, but please go to floridastate.rivals.com or theosceola.com and check us out, and we'll be back. Jerry, Mark, thanks for joining me, and Mark, I'm going to let you sign us off as always.
Go Noles.